As an institute mainly comprised of graduate students, JILA has long recognized the need for community, collaboration, and mutual support among those at the heart of its research endeavors. Fostering support and education for younger scientists is directly written into the Institute's procedural resolutions, as one of its primary purposes is to educate the scientists of the future. A cornerstone of this support is via the JILA Association of Graduate Students, or JAGS. Founded in summer of 2024 to give graduate students a voice within the JILA community, JAGS has become an essential part of JILA's ecosystem, fostering an environment where students can connect, share resources, and support one another in academic and personal life challenges. In this episode of Humans of JILA, we'll explore how JAGS has evolved, supporting the personal and professional development of JILA's graduate students, and serving as a bridge between students and faculty. Through JAGS, students are empowered to host seminars, organize social events, and cultivate a network of mentorship and learning that extends well beyond the lab. Today, we'll hear from members of JAGS about the group's significance, both historically and in their daily lives. These members include JILA graduate students Kazemi Adachi, Conall McCabe, and Anya Grafov. Both Kazemi and Conall work on the advocacy initiative of JAGS, while Anya helps lead the community initiative of the group. So join us as we dive into the role JAGS plays in shaping the student experience, upholding JILA's values, and helping graduate students build a sense of belonging and purpose within the Institute. You're listening to Humans of JILA, a JILA podcast focusing on the human narrative of the institution's researchers. I'm your host and science communicator, Kenna Hughes-Castleberry. Every month, I tell the story of a researcher or group within JILA, showcasing the human sides behind the science. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like it on our YouTube channel or follow us on Spotify, and be sure to share it with your friends and family. This episode features an interview with JILA graduate students Kazemi Adachi, Conall McCabe, and Anya Grafov, 3 of the dozen or so graduate student leaders of JAGS. So whether you're a physics enthusiast, a current JILA member, part of JILA's vast alumni network, or considering JILA as the next step in your career, stay tuned as we explore the JILA Association of Graduate Students, or JAGS. Let's begin our story. If you've been an avid listener of this podcast, you may already know where I'm going to be starting this story, with a bit of backstory on each of our 3 JAG leaders. This humanizes the science they study and gives you a bit of the flavor of the many talented individuals working within the Institute. The first person I interviewed for this podcast was Kazemi Adachi.
Yeah, I've always been someone who liked math and science, and I feel very lucky that in high school I just had great teachers and also just great friends in my science classes. And specifically for physics, I remember sophomore year of high school, my teacher, Ms. Gold, was just so fun and enthusiastic about physics. And the experiment I remember the most from that was being able to, we were flying pink pigs around and seeing how their circular motion. It was just crazy pig on a string.
I love that.
And I still remember that.
Yeah. And so kind of what led you to JILA from high school?
Yeah, well, college in between.
Yes, of course.
And yeah, again, having great teachers and just really realizing that I liked physics. I thought it was kind of a very powerful way to interact with the world and to analyze and think about any problem how can I break this down into something that I actually know? And so then coming out of college, coming to JILA was actually because of Conrad, who is now back at Yale, where I went to college, but because I got good recommendation that he was doing superconducting physics. And what I really like that I've had the opportunity to do at JILA is to be kind of involved in all the different things. So doing fabrication, doing simulation, doing measurement and all theory behind it. So that's something that I think is a kind of unique opportunity, at least to our group. But also I think is in line with the spirit of JILA of kind of just do everything. But then also just being next to the mountains and having all the outdoor access is pretty special.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite thing you enjoy doing out of the things you mentioned, the fabrication and simulation?
I used to be afraid of doing fabrication, just because I had done one class of it in undergrad, and one thing I remember is that our final project was making these junctions for solar cells, and it was like this small student clean room, and everything failed, and it was our final project.
No.
And so, but the professor was like, I can't fail everyone, so I guess it's fine. And coming here, it's being in the clean room is still like scary and high stakes.
Yeah.
Dealing with dangerous chemicals and not wanting to ruin the expensive equipment. But I am definitely getting into the flow now of it and feeling like this is a fun place where I can just try different things and doing it safely.
Nice. And do you have like a favorite outdoor activity that you
Recently it has been running. I want to get more into trail running.
Okay.
Go on runs with the slower of my dogs, who is still very fast. My faster dog would be too
fast.
intense.
The slow one, though, maybe you can keep up.
I mean, the slow one still gives me a boost.
Okay.
She's not slow, but
Yeah.
she's manageable.
While Kazemi highlighted the teachers and mentors along his journey, Conall touched more on his family history of education.
So, again, as you just mentioned off mic, the first question I was going to ask is how you got into physics. So could you kind of give us a brief background on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I came from a family that valued education, which is the first thing, because I've met a lot of people who never even knew that physics could be a thing for them. And I was always encouraged that it could be a possibility. When I was 15, we have a national science contest in Ireland that's run by Intel. And I submitted a project that was like physics related, studying like some sort of dynamics. And I ended up being a finalist in that at the national level. And, that kind of experience taught me that like physics is something that, isn't just a bore doing homework in school. At the same time, I was thinking about applying to medicine, and I applied to both, thinking whatever I get in, I'll do one and then try and switch to the other. I applied to do medicine, and I didn't get in.
Okay.
I applied to physics, and I did. So I ended up doing physics, and I thought I'd retake the medical exam again, because I was only off by a couple points.
Wow.
And but after my first year, I was pretty enamored, so I figured I'd just go on. And then when I finished my bachelor degree, I thought, I'd do a medical physics master's and go back in. But at this point, I was, happy just enough doing the physics, so I stopped. And I suppose that's kind of it. I don't know how long you have to go until you're into physics,
Right. That's a good point.
Even doing my master's in physics, I was thinking, am I into physics now? Or
right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like, where is the entry point here?
Exactly, yeah.
So do you want to go into medical physics after you're a doctor?
No. I think my family has that covered by now.
Okay.
And, it leads into the next question, I guess, a bit. But my partner, my girlfriend, is in medical school, and I think I'm all medicined out at this point.
You get all of kind of the life through her, right? You're
Exactly,
seeing it
yeah.
through her, so you get the stress.
Exactly. And even just going to hospitals yourself, and seeking care, there's only so much you can think about it. Yeah.
That's fair.
So physics by itself is enough at this point, anyway. Yeah.
Understandable, yeah. Little less stressful, maybe, depending.
Oh, far less stressful. Oh my God. Yeah.
So how did you end up coming to JILA?
Well, yeah, a bit tight. I guess it's a two-part question, which is, so originally I'm from Ireland.
Right.
I grew up on the west coast in a place called Galway, and I did my bachelor's there in the capital, Dublin. And then, so in summer of 2019, I met my current girlfriend, who's from Wisconsin. We were both exchange students in University of Cambridge, doing some bit of research. And she moved to the UK to do her master's, and I moved to Germany to do my master's.
Okay.
And we were doing long distance. Okay. And then she wanted to go back to medicine because that's what she'd always wanted to do since she was a young girl. And so she moved back to the US to study medicine and go to medical school. And so, for the sake of our relationship, I had to move over.
So you followed her back.
Well, you could do a physics PhD anyway.
You can, yeah.
Just a language barrier, really. But
yeah.
Physics in the US is just as good as physics in Germany, So
true.
So I knew I had to come to the US, for that reason. And then when I was doing my master's supervisor, he organized a conference about like atomic physics, theory and research and experiments and all this. And he invited everybody he knew, and a fair number of people came. And that was the first time I'd met people, who were doing physics research, in the US.
Okay.
And so I just made a big list of all the, the people doing, top-notch atomic physics theory. And one woman who was speaking at that conference was Anna Maria Ray. And she was very enthusiastic, even though she was presenting via Zoom. And she ran a very large group that was interested in a ton of different stuff. And so, I just applied. I mean, truth be told, when you apply for graduate school, it's basically you just apply to a bunch of different places here, and you hope to God you get in somewhere.
Yeah. You're like, please let someone say yes.
Please let someone say yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got into 2 places.
Okay.
Here and another place that's far less boring, so I won't even mention it. Far more boring, sorry. And I came here, and everybody, quality was great of the research, and everybody seemed like they had lives outside the labs.
Yeah.
And Boulder seemed a nice place to live. Also, an hour flight to St. Louis, which is where my girlfriend living.
Perfect.
So, happy enough here, yeah.
Similarly to Conall, Anya also highlighted a family history of learning physics.
So my first question is, can you briefly tell us how you got into physics?
Yeah, so kind of in a weird backwards way, most of my family are actually physicists. Both of my parents got degrees in physics. My grandfather was a professor of physics. We have a lot of family friends that are physicists, and I had no intention of following in their footsteps. Physics wasn't really particularly on my radar, but I was the first person in my family to go to college in America with the American education system. So I didn't really know how to pick a major or anything like that. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be an English professor, so I just picked whatever subject I liked the most in high school, which happened to be chemistry. And so I started out as a chemistry major in undergrad, and my undergrad chem department was really heavily orgo and biochem oriented, and I found out really quickly that I really did not like organic chemistry. I was not good at organic chemistry. I really liked the physical chemistry side of things. And because of that, and because of an honors physics class that I took my first year that was introduced me to research, I decided to switch to the next closest thing, which happened to be physics. And from there, I got involved in some physics research and really just fell in love with the subject.
That's fabulous. So how did you end up here at JILA?
Yeah, so I started out, like I said, doing some physics research in undergrad, and then I did an REU at NYU where I was doing some optics research the summer after my second year of undergrad. So when I came back to UMD, I was interested in finding an optics lab, and I ended up joining the group of John Forkas at University of Maryland. And in my research, I used a laser to study gold nanoparticles. And from that, I really fell in love with the idea of using optics, using light to study materials. So when I was applying to graduate schools, I was looking at programs that had really strong both materials and light science research groups and departments. And I also really wanted to live in the mountains, which really limited where I could go to school in the U.S. And I did a road trip right before I was applying to graduate school where I came to Colorado, and based off my undergrad advisor's recommendation, I actually scheduled a meeting with Margaret and Henry in the KM group, and I came to Boulder, fell in love with Boulder, fell in love with the mountains, met with Margaret and Henry, was really excited by the research, and then I met with students in the research group, and they all seemed really happy. It seemed like a really, really fun and positive, collaborative research environment, and that made me really, really want to apply to CU and apply to work in a research group in JILA. So I did, and then I was a very nerve-wracking few months where I thought I wouldn't get in here. And eventually I did. And as soon as I got my acceptance to JILA or to CU, I knew I wanted to come to JILA because I just liked it so much. And accepted the acceptance almost immediately.
While the 3 JAG leaders featured in this episode have been at JILA for some time, it wasn't until this past summer that they came together to help form JAGS. The group was also supported by the JILA Physics Frontier Center, or PFC, an NSF-funded center within JILA.
Yeah, so before JAGS was formed, I had been working on Life After JILA, which is a seminar series where we bring in JILA alumni to talk about their careers and their trajectory following their time at JILA to where they are today. And from working in a leadership role with helping to run Life After JILA, I was one of the students that was contacted by the JILA PFC and the JILA administration about potentially starting a graduate council. So yeah, the PFC reached out to a lot of students who were in leadership roles and then also sent out a mass email to all the students within JILA just saying, hey, we want to form a graduate council. You're already in a leadership role, or maybe you want to be in a leadership role. Would you be interested in meeting and telling us your ideas and hearing out our ideas about forming a grad council? So I came to this meeting. It was a lot of other people who maybe were grad student representatives or volunteering with other organizations within JILA or just wanted to get involved. And in this meeting, the JILA leadership kind of told us about their ideas for what they thought a graduate council could do, but they wanted to hear our feedback, and they left it really open-ended, where they said, hey, we want you guys to form a graduate council. We want to hear your feedback on these ideas that we had, but we also want to hear what you guys want to do, and we want to help you make it happen. And so that's how JAGS started being formed. We had this initial meeting. We had a lot of ideas that then transitioned into becoming a graduate student council, and then within, I think, a few meetings, we decided to call ourselves JAGS, or the JILA Association of Graduate Students.
Like Anya, Conall had already been doing similar work to that of his role within JAGS when it was first established.
When I came here, I wanted to get a bit more involved in graduate student affairs, because when I was a master's student in Germany, I saw a lot of people who had to deal with a lot of things, and I kind of just made the assumption they probably had to deal with the same things here.
I see.
Because JILA is an institute with a certain research standard, and there are common issues that come up when you try and achieve that standard. So I asked to be a graduate student representative, which at the time nobody could give me any information about, because it didn't seem like this role had really been active in the last couple of years. And then I got an email from Lauren Mason and Andreas Becker et al. Saying that this PFC group wanted to, form a graduate student association to, make student affairs in JILA a bit more cohesive. And they invited me to, get involved in it, given I'd already kind of expressed an interest in graduate student affairs from being this representative.
Right.
In this representative role, yeah. So I think from that, we kind of just took what they had envisioned for us and kind of molded it into our own thing in terms of what we were interested in doing. It seemed like from the outset, their original vision was to improve communication between the fellows and graduate students, whereas we had where we had an idea to further community events for graduate students and maybe do a bit more in terms of advocating for students towards the fellows rather than just telling graduate students about what the fellows are thinking.
Right. Understandable. Make it a dialogue, not a monologue.
So, but I think it's a fair point that like JAGS is becoming more and more like a compromise tool between fellows and graduate students. Like they had a certain vision for what they wanted us to do. we had a certain vision for what we wanted to do, and we're trying to find like a bit of a balance. It's not just that we're doing completely our own thing.
In forming JAGS, there were a few obvious goals that the group hoped to address from the get-go, which Conall touched on briefly already.
Yeah, so the goals have more or less stayed the same, although the exact ways that we've been addressing them have evolved. So in this very first meeting with the JILA leadership, kind of the two main themes, or we've been calling them pillars, that have that emerged were advocacy and community building. So advocacy, advocating for the benefit of students, making sure students are treated fairly, making sure students are paid fairly, making sure students have someone to talk to and resources to go to for when they feel like they're not being treated fairly, and long-term creating a system to address any possible inequities and things like that. So that's the advocacy side that emerged in the first meeting. And then also on the community building side, we were really excited about the idea of creating more collaboration between research groups in JILA. So sharing research ideas, sharing research, even just that, because in my time as a graduate student, I'm in my 5th year now, and I have so many friends in JILA, and most of them are friends, they're people that I've interacted with, but I have no idea what they work on because they're not in the same research group as me. Right. So just building up more collaboration and connection between students in different research groups, and then just also building a stronger community of grad students, staff, postdocs, and everyone within JILA as a whole. So that was what excited us, and so we decided to move forward with JAGS with those as the two kind of main pillars or ideas that we wanted to push forward. And so then JAGS kind of split into these two groups, and we now have a strong team working on advocacy and a strong team working on community building, and then we all come together as JAGS as a whole to push forward these goals.
Both Kazemi and Conall helped lead the advocacy initiatives within JAGS. Here's Kazemi explaining a bit further the current projects that this pillar of JAGS is focusing on.
Our goals right now are kind of colloquially organized into Fun Brigade and, advocating for student welfare. And so I'm more, or at least I have been more on the advocacy side. And our goal for the past year has been starting a JILA advising program for students to be able to talk to faculty in a non-judgmental, not like so aggressive, low stakes kind of format.
And what do you hope that kind of turns into in the long run, like students feeling more supported or being able to get help from multiple advisors or?
Yeah, exactly. I think right now what we're trying to do is just see how this model works, because this kind of mentorship or advising, in our impression, doesn't really exist. And from also talking to the different offices on campus, there's no model for it at all of CU. Yeah. And so I think we really want to tap into the resource that faculty do care about students and want, the culture to be improved for students. But I think, frankly, we don't talk enough about it in public. And so having this kind of bottom-up, semi-institutional, avenue for us to be able to talk about issues that students are facing, and be able to talk about it with faculty in a way that's not like, okay, we're going to try to fix this immediately, but how can we, just start this conversation? I think is a long-term goal that we're excited to start as soon as possible.
Yeah. Get the ball rolling, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Has JILA been supportive of that? Have you found that people are actually very receptive to this idea? Or is it more kind of like, you got to convince people first sort of thing?
I think the JILA has been actually quite supportive of it. We've presented at fellows meetings and gotten positive feedback from that. We had actually more faculty who were interested than we even expected at first. So I think that's really good for making sure that this is a sustainable program that doesn't just kind of overburden the faculty in one year and then they burn out. And yeah, the hardest thing, rather than getting like support, has been, can we just like schedule meetings with faculty because they're so busy?
Similarly, Conall highlighted the importance of sustainable, inclusive advising within the JILA community.
So I guess we've divided ourselves into two goals, one of which is advocacy for graduate students, which is, my main area of interest, at least as far as this is concerned, and also the community building. So I guess advocacy would mean making sure that graduate students in JILA feel like they're supported during their studies, they work in like a collaborative environment, they're fairly compensated for their work, whereas the community building is more, getting people to know each other, forming like research connections between the different groups at the graduate level. Yeah. That's the overarching picture, I'd say, yeah.
So I know you work on the advocacy side, so could you tell us a little bit about the projects you're working on?
As soon as we kind of gone together, just at an anecdotal level, the people who are involved in the advocacy side realized that things could be a bit better in JILA in terms of how people were feeling about the work environment. I had noticed that there had already been a study at the campus-wide in terms of culture in the different departments, but there wasn't specifically one for JILA. I helped run a survey of the graduate students at JILA and asked them basically the same questions that the university had asked the physics department, so that you could decipher if this is an issue in JILA or just an issue in the physics department at wide. And I guess some kind of key things came out of that survey, one of which was that about 60% of graduate students at JILA didn't feel like they had adequate advising. And by advising here, I mean like advising outside of research in terms of,
gotcha.
A career advising.
Sure.
When you have some,
questions about applications or jobs or
something.
Jobs, yeah.
Or maybe you have like you have an argument with somebody you work with, and you want to go to talk to someone to,
facilitate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one thing. Another thing is that the graduate students didn't really feel like there was a clear line of communication between them and the fellows. Only about 1 in 10 graduate students felt this was sufficient, and the same number thought that they had an active role in decision making on their behalf at the fellow level. In addition, there was a wider Culture Institute survey done by the university for all the institutes on campus, of which JILA is one, and that found that in the prior year from when I joined, 2022 to 2023, that about over half the women at the graduate level had considered leaving JILA due to workplace culture, whereas for men it was only about 1 in 10.
Oh wow!
So there's this large discrepancy between between genders. So there's all these salient kind of issues that the survey at least kind of quantified that we had somewhat known at the anecdotal level, and then we started to think about ways to perhaps address them. And in this regard, it was Maya Miklos who was the main person who came up with an idea for an advising service. So for context, the physics department has a mentoring service that all the graduate students can opt into, but it has two flaws. One of which is that, usually if you have an issue with a friend, a colleague, your parents, you go and seek advice from somebody else, but you're the one who chooses it, right? Whereas in the physics department, they kind of just give you a mentor, and you can't choose it.
Okay, so if you don't gel well with them, that's an issue.
Exactly, yeah. Then you're kind of hosed, right?
Yeah. And
the other issue is that this is only the case for graduate students who are in their first or second year. So if you're, the PhD usually lasts at least 6 years.
Yeah.
So you've got 4 more years, and those are usually where the issues come out because you start working with people more closely. So our idea was basically an advising service that is free of those two issues, where one, any graduate student can make use of it no matter what their seniority is, and number two, that you can choose who you go and seek advice from, because obviously everybody has their own different personalities, and you need to find somebody who gels with you well. So we asked a couple faculty to to kind of volunteer their time for the service, and we're grateful that 5 of them said yeah.
Wow.
Along with Jessica Hohen, who's the director of PISEC and public engagement at JILA. So we have about 6 people who are senior and who decided to volunteer their time. And I guess the idea is that if anybody has like a grievance or needs advice regarding anything to do with things at JILA, that they can reach out to these people, ask for an hour of their time and just sit down and have a chat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Does the number of students who are using this program, does it overwhelm the 5 faculty and Jessica? Like, do they have a lot of students they now have to juggle for advising?
We don't think so. I think that was a really important point, that if we were to set up anything, it would be sustainable, because the fellows are very busy.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't in good conscience come to them and say, look, there are these issues, and if you just volunteer all your time, it will solve them.
Yeah.
Because that's not realistic, obviously.
Right.
So we're kind of at this sweet spot in the Institute where, there are these issues, but as far as the survey is concerned, about 15 people per semester is what we estimate would make use of the service.
Okay.
And so we have about 6 faculty who decided to volunteer their time, so that's only about 2 people per semester, which we feel is fairly manageable.
So besides the 6 individuals signing up for their time, have you seen any other ways that JILA has supported your projects on the advocacy side for JAGS?
What I will say is there are some fellows who decided to volunteer their time, and I mean volunteer in a very strong sense, because they're getting no credit as, insofar as the physics department is concerned. They're really doing this because they feel it's necessary and it's worthwhile. We had a ton of faculty who supported it, even though they said that they did not have the time to get involved. So we know that it's not just a subset of people who believe in it. And not only were they willing to volunteer their time insofar as, listening to grad students come to their doors, but they were also willing to take mentoring training. It was very important to us that we asked the fellows to undergo a training or a workshop of sorts, whereby they could, for most of them, relearn kind of mentoring best practices, how to set norms around like privacy for these conversations, because in some instances you may be talking about colleagues that you've both interacted with, and you could both be friendly with in your workplace, and they were quite willing to take those trainings, which took about 2 hours of their time, which for them is obviously very precious. In that regard, we're very appreciative of them. Yeah, it was very interesting then when Maya proposed this initial idea for the advising service. We all thought it was a fairly simple to implement idea, and just in thesis also quite straightforward. So we reached out to a bunch of different resources on campus, like OIEC, OVA, CAPS. All these are just acronyms, but they mean something.
They're all different offices.
They're all different offices that advocate for people, and some of them are counseling services and all this, and mentoring services. And what we were quite surprised with is that this project had never been, conceived of before on campus.
Wow.
A mentoring system whereby students can choose their own mentor and go and speak to them. So what we're kind of doing is, in JILA, is brand new as far as we know, at least at the state level. And in this regard, we got Sarah Williams, who's a counselor at the Office of Victims of Assistance, and Lauren Huff, who is a physics faculty at the JILA Frontier Institute, and they, also volunteered their time to come together and create a training from scratch to give to the faculty. So it's not just about support within JILA that made this possible, but there's also people in offices outside of it who really didn't need to put in that time, but decided to anyway. So we're really appreciative of that.
Working in tandem with the advocacy group, Anya helps lead the community initiative of JAGS, focusing on encouraging more community amongst graduate students at JILA.
Yeah, so I think on the advocacy side, we've already had a couple other students talk about that, and I actually work on the community building side, so I'll focus on that. So one of the things is Life After JILA, so that is something that I worked on before, and so that is something that JAGS has now enveloped. So we're continuing to do Life After JILA, both the seminars where we bring in alumni, and also we're doing a yearly or maybe even twice a year, once per semester, alumni mixer, where we invite all local alumni and essentially anyone who wants to come to this event to come after work to meet with students, and it's in a casual environment. We provide food, people can get drinks, and just to network, socialize, catch up with old colleagues, meet students who are now working for their old advisors, to learn where students can talk about career paths and things like that. So really just a networking event with the greater JILA community. So that's one of our goals. And then the other main goal is a graduate student seminar series. So like I mentioned, I felt, and a lot of other students felt, like there wasn't really much communication between research groups in JILA, so we have all this amazing research going on, and no one knows what anyone else is working on.
Right.
At least the students don't. So we decided to start this seminar series where students can present their research in sort of colloquium-style talks. And we decided to make this a very flexible sort of colloquium, so we can make it so we made it so that students can choose the duration of their presentations to fit whatever their needs are. So if they're preparing for a conference, they can practice their conference talk. If they're preparing for comps, they can practice their comps talk. If they just are really excited to share a new research result and they're about to publish a paper, they can present it there. And so we leave the time duration flexible, but we usually have 2 to 3 speakers per seminar that span different groups and different research areas. And we invite all students, postdocs, and staff, basically anyone in JILA other than the JILA fellows, to come and attend these talks, to hear from students or staff, to ask questions, and to start scientific conversations. And that's been really, really fun and really exciting because we've gotten to learn about a lot of new research and start more conversations between students in different groups. And because we're also inviting postdocs and staff, now we're creating more awareness within the JILA community of what's going on. Staff have more of an idea of the projects that are going on that they're probably already supporting, and students can also learn more about the ways that staff can be valuable resources and support their work as well. So those are kind of the main goals on the community building team, but we also have some more stuff in the pipeline. We want to create some social events, so more casual, not like formal networking events, but just an end of semester party or a welcome party where students can meet each other and mingle in a more casual environment.
Sure.
And then we're also working on revamping the Debbie Gin Room. So the Debbie Gin Room is a space that's supposed to be for the graduate students to lounge, hang out, relax, take a break from research, chat with each other, maybe even have these exciting scientific discussions. And that space has really been underutilized. So one of the very first things that JAGS did after forming is get a new ping pong table, because that was something that we heard from a lot of grad students, is that they really miss the ping pong table that used to exist in JILA.
Right.
So now that's housed in the Debbie Gin Room. There are now people playing ping pong in the Debbie Gin Room, which is a huge win for us. And we're working on getting new, comfier furniture and getting TVs and gaming systems set up so that students can kind of hang out and unwind there.
That's great. So how has kind of the JILA community, I know you mentioned, these, the staff, the postdocs, the students all attend these talks, but how has the community as a whole kind of shown up for JAGS and helped support your projects?
Yeah, so I would say the main way that the community has shown up is by showing up. So we really, really wanted these events to, you can't build community if you don't have a community there. Right. So our goal was really to get as much attendance as possible at our events and hopefully to have the people who attend to enjoy them. And that has definitely been the case. Our most recent JAGS seminar, we had 81 attendees, which is, we think, quite a lot. Yeah. Most colloquiums don't even get that many attendees, so we were really, really proud of that. And the community as a whole has just been super supportive. Everybody's been attending the events as much as they're able. People have given us really positive feedback about all of the events that we've hosted, and everyone seems to be really excited. So just the fact that the community, both students and postdocs and staff and the fellows, are all buying into this, they're all supporting it, that's really the main thing that we need to be successful. And everyone has been really, really positive about it. And in addition to that, people have been signing up to give talks, both students and staff. So having people who are volunteering to actively participate in this has really helped make this a success.
Besides helping their fellow graduate students, Kazemi, Anya, and Conall find that working with JAGS brings them a unique sense of fulfillment and purpose. Each of them has discovered their own favorite aspects of being part of this community.
It's very easy when you're working in an organization trying to deal with issues that go above your pay scale to become demotivated and sink into a cycle of just complaining. All the people that got involved working in JAGS are the sort of people who actually want to get things done, which is obviously a recurring theme in JILA.
Yes.
But it's invigorating to be around people who see an issue, whether it be advocacy in terms of graduate students or even just getting other graduate students in JILA to know each other better and, actually make a plan and follow through with it and get stuff done.
Yeah.
That might seem like a cop-out of an answer, but I've been involved in organizations where there's large plans drawn up and
nobody does
you're going
anything
to change the world and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
So it's been good working with that. Also talking, for me, I joined when I was I just moved here and I'm going into my second year now, and when I got involved I was only a couple months in, and it was useful for me to get to know people in the higher years.
Yeah.
Because obviously they've been here for a while, and they can let you know what are the norms, what norms should be stick with, what things should be changed, how people actually feel, who have been here doing it for a bit longer. But yeah, I'd say that's it. I'm invigorated by working with JAGS, knowing that if there's some issue that I see, I can come to people and people actually take it seriously.
Kazemi echoed Conall's sentiments about the camaraderie and collaboration within JAGS.
My favorite part has been the fact that we have such a good team with all different perspectives who are contributing to it. I'll take a tangent to describe that. In my first and second year, I was part of trying to organize a different group with a different acronym called GASP, the Graduate Association for Students in Physics, which was trying to be something kind of similar, but more CU physics-wide. And for a number of reasons, it was still tail end of COVID, and so we weren't really interacting in person. And also, I think we were mostly young grad students. We didn't know what the culture and the situation was in physics. And so that was actually quite difficult to keep moving. And what has been such a nice contrast with JAGS is that there is this team of 10 of us. And so we can be comfortable at any point to say, I'm actually overburdened right now. I'm overworked. Can someone else take the responsibility on this? And there is someone there, which just makes it so much more manageable to deal with.
Anya had a slightly different answer, shifting more towards the broader JILA community beyond just the graduate student population.
I think I can say two different things. Both of them have to do with the JAGS community and the JILA community. First of all, just working with everyone else who's a part of JAGS in all the different leadership roles has been such a joy and has been so satisfying. I've been involved in a lot of student organizations, both in undergrad and in grad school, and one of the hardest things I think about running a student organization is people get really excited and they start all this work and then they get busy, and unfortunately the work just drops off. And that's kind of inevitable when you have people whose number one priority can't be the organization. Right. Obviously, your lab work, your theoretical simulations, they have to come first. But because we have such a strong group and we have enough volunteers, everyone kind of chips away at whatever they have the time to do. And not that there's really slack, but people pick up each other's slack, and everyone, if we have a list of tasks to do, everyone will kind of volunteer on their own to do something. And if someone says, hey, I'm really busy, I can't do that this week, someone else will chime in and say, oh, I'm happy to do that, I have a little bit more time. So it's just been really, really satisfying to see how we've actually been getting things done, and I feel like we actually have really strong momentum going. And not only that, but we're making it sustainable for the long term. So after I graduate, after the other JAGS leadership students graduate, hopefully this organization will continue to exist and will continue to succeed. So just being able to work with a group of students who are so motivated and everyone's so willing to help each other out, that's been really satisfying. And then the other thing that I love about working with JAGS is I feel like it's already brought me so much closer to the JILA community. I try to interact with as many students as possible, but going to each of these seminars and running these seminars, I've had the opportunity to talk to all of our speakers and hear more about their research. I've also had the opportunity to talk to the attendees and get their feedback, get feedback from staff, and just have a lot more conversations with people in JILA, whether that's scientific conversations or just casual conversations. Right. So I feel like working with JAGS has given me, honestly, more friends and more of a community, and that feels really good.
Thank you for listening to Humans of JILA, a JILA podcast. Be sure to subscribe to JILA's YouTube channel for more information and to keep listening to these episodes. This episode featured an interview with JILA graduate students and JAGS leaders Kazemi Adachi, Conall McCabe, and Anya Grafov. Production design, sound design, and research by Kenna Hughes-Castleberry, with the assistance from JILA Science Communication Office and JILA Associate of Graduate Students. Sound and music by Pegsabe and Kevin MacLeod. JILA is a joint institute between NIST and the University of Colorado Boulder. JILA hosts this podcast. Any use of this podcast without JILA's permission or credit is prohibited.